space tourism voyages should be marketed as life-altering experience to be remembered positively for the rest of the life of the visitor, because they are. Space tourism has been thought of as being something that one can feel a bit guilty about, considering how much poverty there is still in the world. However, this can be fixed with the space tourism company being a sponsor of some kinds of charity itself. Funding charities for the underprivileged by the space tourism company could be the best marketing trick in the universe for a space tourism corporation, and well worth the cost of relatively big but still affordable donations, if the contributions are made public enough. The giving of money to an aid organization by the Space Tourism Corporation will lift a subconscious ethical burden of deciding how charitable a potential space tourist should be themselves, on top of being a good and generous thing to do. The specific charities that should be targeted would be to help the poor and disadvantaged in the third world. A Mars tourist trip will take a lot of time to complete and should not be marketed like any other summer vacation, but as a kind of pilgrimage. Pilgrimages to the Holy Land by wealthy Europeans from as early as medieval times were happening, even though they took years. Time is money, and the biggest hurdle to getting people to visit Mars. This is why it might be preferable to market to individuals in early retirement. No fitness worries. People in their upper 60s who are multimillionaires and interested in space would normally be in very good health, and older and frailer people have traveled into space already. The normal lifespan of a millionaire is well above average. Your average Mars tourist might be fitter on their return to Earth with regular exercise on a long mission to and from Mars. Visits to the Martian surface by private individuals will not be called tourist missions for the first half of the century, as Alan said. The historical parallel is again Antarctica, where commercial Antarctic tourism, even in 2010, is only for coastal nature visits to look at the whales. Complexity is something that should be avoided whenever possible in space tourism spacecraft. The simpler a well-made device is, the cheaper and longer lived it is, as well as having fewer components that can malfunction. Bigelow Aerospace seems to be producing inflatable modules that would make excellent components in Moon or Mars liners or any kind of extraterrestrial hotels. Simple, compact before inflation, lightweight, and robust. Mars liners should, of course, be as reusable as possible, and I'm estimating that it would be preferable to have the capacity for the housing of 7 passengers, 1 crew, and 6 paying guests that have trained beforehand as a team. The team would need to be, of course, totally amicable, and so psychological testing is a necessity, unlike much shorter lunar surface visits. The captain of a Mars liner, in addition to being an aerospace engineer, leader, and trainer, shall need a medical training and knowledge of psychiatry. Companies that are already getting successfully into the suborbital space tourism industry now are probably going to be involved. There can be joint investment by multiple companies in technology and Phobos tourist infrastructure sometimes, though. The first suborbital space tourism companies will not stop there. They will go on to become the first orbital space tourism companies, then the first lunar surface bus tour companies, and the first Mars tourism companies. The biggest hurdle is escaping the gravity well of Earth. Spaceship 4, planned to be developed by Scale Composites, is expected to do this, becoming quite possibly the world's first fully reusable orbital launcher, and the technology will be constantly improving. Reaction Engines of the UK has just as good a chance of doing this. Space tourism is already happening, and Mars orbital tourism can happen almost in parallel with affordable lunar tourism. It is just the case of when it is profitable. The company seize the day and develop the technology while marketing the trips correctly. I would invest the time and money in it now if I was given the opportunity. I hope you enjoyed the movie, and thank you very much for your thoughtful and valued concentration. Well, any questions?
Yeah, how about a lottery?
Well, I imagine half of you actually walked out of this thing, so maybe it was too technical or too controversial or something like that. But it's just, I've been working on space tourism for the last 4 years now. Admittedly, I haven't had very much success yet, but people really do want to go into space. Look at you guys. Wouldn't you? How many people here would love to go into space and would think, and it didn't cost too much? There you go.
Yeah, you need those spot facts for some of us.
Could you identify yourself and...
My name's Kieran Griffith. I'm a graduate of the International Space University and Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And at the moment I'm between jobs, but I'm certainly trying very hard to get a job. And as they say, you win some, you lose some, and eventually you have to win some. And eventually I'll just win a job. It'll take a while, but just keep going, and eventually you'll be successful. But it's like, it's the way exploration has gone for thousands of years. It's just right now, at the moment, it's done by countries and stuff like that, but eventually it will just go back to commercial. It's a bit early to be talking about it.
I'm just curious, what makes you optimistic enough to say that it actually will hit a critical mass and actually take off? Why not just have it be like China, where they started exploring?
Oh yeah, it's still going to be done by countries for the next couple of decades.
Well, but I'm saying
also China is a communist country.
No, I'm talking about like in the 1500s. You mentioned Christopher Columbus, how Spain went on and they became very rich. Well, China also had a much very successful exploration thing, and then they decided, well, we're not going to do that anymore, and then they just continued to stop exploring.
It just wasn't in their culture. They weren't big into exploration like the Japanese were, or the Europeans were. It's also naval technology wasn't as good as Europeans. And the Europeans were the first to come to China. The Chinese didn't come to Europe. It's when the Europeans first came to China, their technology was about equal. They said, well, in fact, the Chinese were better at a lot of things. And they said, well, these guys, they're from Europe. They've got really great naval technology, but apart from that, they're not very interesting. And then all of a sudden they had the Industrial Revolution in Europe, and it just happened to happen there, and boom. Since they were also interested in exploration, traveling all over the world, that's what happened, and they just took over. And it's going to happen again with, things like countries, national programs will happen again in China, and it's going to happen again in India as well, because it's such a proud country, and also they want to keep up with China. But in places like the West, or Europe and America, Canada, that sort of thing, probably Brazil, they're just going to say, well, the governments have done so much they can do, and it keeps getting delayed or changed and stuff like that, and people are just going to say, well, let's just do it ourselves. It's happened in the UK. The UK, their National Space Agency said, we're never going to get involved in human spaceflight. Now it's just that's the place where people who have really been interested in human spaceflight have actually said, we're going to do something, like reaction engines and the vertical acting. Any questions?
Yeah, question about using the moon. You know, if you could find something to mine on the moon that would be worthwhile for, say, supplying a Mars vehicle, it doesn't take much velocity to get loose from the moon if you can mine it.
Yeah, but it
You
might
could do that with
be-
a catapult, you wouldn't need a rocket.
I'm suspecting it's going to be a huge effort though to mine, because you'd have to
Yeah.
mine through thousands and thousands of tons of lunar polar dust to get like a very small amount of water. So with the development of affordable low Earth orbit,
That's no possibility.
that's going.
Without the stuff to man. Well, if you could find something on the moon that made it worthwhile, that you could get to.
Helium-3 is certainly a big possibility, but it's also a gamble.
Well, we're about to run out of ordinary helium right now. As I understand it. Give it 20 years and it's gone.
Okay. It certainly is a possibility, and Lord, goodness, it would be so beautiful if helium-3 does happen, but it's only a possibility, not a certainty. But my goodness, if it does happen, it's going to be amazing. Okay?
Do you conceive of any near future emergent markets in space besides the tourism industry as a major market that could emerge in the next few decades?
Well, I don't think certainly helium-3 could happen.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of, possibly from actually manufacturing in microgravity of very complex materials that can only done in microgravity. And I'd say probably the biggest thing will actually be, eventually, in about, go to yourself, maybe about 80 years, tourism will be the biggest industry. Colonization of space, I don't think it's going to happen, because people will have a difficulty in being healthy when they go to other planets, unless they become completely different kinds of people. But you're involved in hotels, right? You're involved in hotels?
No.
You're not? Oh, I thought that was the outfit for the hotel.
No.
The atmosphere of Venus would be
Venus?
the best place, because
Venus?
there you wouldn't have to readapt your body at a certain altitude.
I did a paper actually on Venus. Venus, I figured that you could probably figure out some way to have genetically modified bacteria you already have bacteria that eat sulfur. You already have bacteria that can live in hundreds and hundreds of degrees.
No, not the surface. Up there in the
Yeah,
atmosphere,
you could,
where the pressure is close to Earth or 1/2 or something like that, and the gravity is essentially the same and so on.
Oh, I was thinking of actually terraforming the entire planet and making it Earth too.
Well, maybe, but this is what we could do now with balloons and a minimum of terraforming.
That's certainly a good idea. I just haven't thought of it yet. You should write a paper about it. I mean, it's
Well,
really
it's
good.
not my idea. The speaker yesterday
Mhm.
developed that, and I think it's in the program.
It's actually originally Carl Sagan's idea. You take it way back.
Jeffrey Landis did the program engineering.
But there could be Marriott hotels in low Earth orbit, that's for sure. And Marriott hotels on the moon, and
1 minute left. For days.
okay. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up. I appreciate the people who are actually able to stand the whole movie and not walk out. It's a very technical and controversial movie. But thank you very much for your attention.